All right, good morning, afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It's been an interesting day. This is Steve Nelson. How's everybody doing? We're going to do this briefing here a little quick. I apologize for the first slide. Everything is up to date. Don't be afraid when it says May 23rd on the screen, but we'll get going here now that everybody's here. The first slide you should see should say highlights. We're looking at above normal temperatures continuing. We've definitely had some record heat, especially middle Georgia and most of the state, but we're expecting that to moderate. Yesterday, actually, probably was the last day we had near record temperatures. I know we had a streak there going starting last weekend. We're not expecting that to persist. So thankfully, we're going to have some moderation. I'll show you the details here in a minute. We're not expecting any kind of extreme heat indices or heat risk even. That's a different way to look at temperatures, mainly based on temperatures. We are going to have a few isolated storms, but unfortunately, we're not going to have much rainfall in the next 7 days. We might have some hope for more rain in the second week of June. That's based on some limited information that we have that far out. We usually do forecasts out to 7 days, but we have some access to our friends at the Climate Prediction Center for forecasts beyond that time frame. They're getting pretty accurate out to 14 days. No widespread strong or severe storms, but we could have, that isolated storm. Just conditions are not really right for strong thunderstorms. It's going to continue to be a little dry. And we're also still experiencing some minor drought conditions that's probably going to increase slowly through the next few weeks until we get some more rainfall. All right, well, here's the upper level pattern, and so it looks a little different. If you were here last week, you might have seen that we were talking about an upper level high pressure system that was very unprecedented, probably, for this is the right word for it, for this time of year in mid-May and even late May. We usually have our warmer temperatures in July, August, even June. We can get very warm with temperatures in the upper 90s or mid 90s sometimes. Our normal temperatures, I don't know if we stressed that enough, last week should be in the mid to upper 80s, so very much above normal temperatures. Right now, I'm going to play this animation for those of you online. You should be able to see that. If you have the PowerPoint that you can play later, you'll see the animation. You should see that on YouTube as well when it's playing. You'll see that I'm going to let this loop a few times here. We're starting out with those pink areas over North Georgia, the Tennessee Valley, Arkansas. That's sort of a jet stream of higher winds aloft. And as I animated here again, that kind of tries to sag into Georgia tomorrow on Friday. We might have a little bit of chance for rain, not much of a chance, about 20% or so, maybe towards 30% in some areas. I'll play it again one more time here. And then that kind of goes away. So there's still a ridge of high pressure building, and it's coming back over South Texas and the Mid-South. It moves into Georgia. It's not quite as strong, so that's the good news. We're not experiencing that big high pressure early next week like we saw this last weekend and earlier this week. It is, definitely above normal temperatures. It's still, unfortunately, the pattern when you're kind of in between the upper level ridge to the west and that trough of low pressure, it's pretty strong over New England. We call that northwest flow, so the winds aloft around 18,000 feet are coming from the northwest, and usually that means dry weather here, especially in the winter and spring and fall months. In the summer, you can actually have thunderstorm complexes develop when you have the right environment. But looking at forecasts for that, there's not much indication or chance for rain. Significant thunderstorm complexes to develop. Maybe that could change. Right now, we're not indicating much moisture at the low levels. We're very dry. Temperatures, we kept something called dew point temperatures that I don't have on the screen here. Those are quite low. Even, in the middle of the summer, sometimes they can drop a little if we haven't had much rain in a while, but it's definitely a dry air mass over the state and in the region. So computer forecasts are not really indicating any chance for thunderstorm complexes to develop in the next 7 days. That's really only our hope in this pattern to give us meaningful rainfall. So I'll play that one last time. You can see, some strong low pressure over New England and ridging high pressure to the west. And unfortunately, we're sort of in between. Eventually, we'll go into the pattern where these jet streams and everything goes far to the north. And when that happens, your main hope for rain is isolated thunderstorms, and you get to the heart of the summer, and or tropical storm or something like that. All right, I'll loop this here as well. If you have the PowerPoint, you'll be able to do this. If you have the PDF files, you won't be able to see that, but on the YouTube link, which we'll share as well, like I'm having trouble running the animation. There it goes. So very isolated thunderstorms. This is reinforced what I was mentioning earlier. This is overnight tonight, and then Friday it loops through about 2.5 days, close to 3 days. You'll see there's a little bit higher coverage, just still isolated. Not really any chance for any one area even to get more than say a 1/4 of an inch. You might get a 1/2 inch if you're lucky under that one of those very small thunderstorms. Most areas are going to be dry, and that's really all I need to share with that. And then here's what our experts at the Weather Prediction Center and the National Weather Service, College Park, Maryland, they're indicating almost no rain at all over the next 7 days. There is some very small amounts that are kind of clipped off. So this is showing about maybe 0.05 or 1/10 of an inch of rain and higher. So everywhere where you see no coloring at all over the state, maybe the far more north areas and the mountains might see a couple tenths possibly in the next 7 days and 1/4. You know, like I said, if you're lucky to get one of those thunderstorms, you might see a little bit more, 1/2 inch or so. But there's going to be a dry period coming up after Saturday, or after Friday, that is, in particular, and maybe some rain chances on the horizon for next week. Here's a snapshot of sort of selected cities across the area. We're not going to dwell on this too much, but just to show you that we're going to still have temperatures above normal, but thankfully they're moderated. A lot of temperatures in the upper 80s in North Georgia, still lower 90s in the Atlanta metro area and Middle Georgia. Nothing like last weekend or just yesterday. Small chances of rain. I think their best chances are really hard to describe. We pretty much have 20 to 25% across the entire state. A little bit maybe higher percentages over west central Georgia, Columbus area, things southwest of Atlanta. Maybe a little bit better coverage, but based on that animation I showed you of the radar, it doesn't really look like any one area is going to have that much more than another part of the state. So current drought conditions. This is a little bit different than what you saw yesterday, a little bit larger area of yellow and brown. Thankfully, we're not in any severe drought yet. That would be the darker orange. That's D2. I think this is all D0, D1, the yellow and the tan colors. So that's good news. We'll keep watching this. If we have a dry summer, that can change. The summers when there's a lot of evaporation on the plants, are doing good now, but that could change in the summer if we just don't get enough rainfall. So the ups and downs so far this summer, or so far actually this whole calendar year, I've got a graph for Atlanta just as an example. It kind of goes up and down. Just a few months ago or weeks ago, it might have felt cool to you. We had a little bit of a cool snap for a few days in late May. Earlier in the spring, we had a little bit of cool snap. There seems to be a little bit more tendency, though, for this year to be above average temperatures over the winter months. We had a lot of rain and moisture in the area. That kind of gives you some warmer temperatures in the winter months. So who knows what may happen here the next few weeks to months this summer. So I've got some charts to kind of answer that question. We saw similar images to this last week. It hasn't changed, although I think the outlook for rainfall has improved maybe from last week. We're seeing a little bit higher chances in that, I guess that's the third shade of green for probability of above rainfall, inching towards Alabama and the west of Georgia. So it's above average chances. 33% can be considered normal in these particular images. It's almost easier to explain this and understand this by looking at the colors. So that green is starting to get a little bit higher confidence for rainfall over the Mid-South and to Alabama, and hopefully we'll get some more rain if that pans out for Georgia. The below normal conditions for rainfall are kind of up there in the Midwest and Great Lakes states. Temperatures, above normal temperatures are still kind of in that third shade, a little bit higher confidence than normal for above average temperatures, especially along southwest Georgia and the Florida Panhandle and southern Alabama. That looks like a pretty good bet, especially if we continue kind of dry in the low levels. So that's about it. I don't really have anything else to share at this time. We're not expecting any threats, any kind of big heat outbreak as far as dangerous heat. Now, anytime we can have heat illness and heat strokes, even with the sensitive and vulnerable populations. That can happen anytime, even with temperatures that are near normal in the summer. It doesn't matter that there's not a risk, or our broadcast meteorologist friends are not, advertising a lot of extreme heat. It is good news that it's moderating. There should be less risk of that. But I want to stress that based on what science and the medical community has told us, you can still have heat illness and incidents of heat stress and heat stroke with normal summertime temperatures. So we're going to be above normal. We're not going to be at the record levels anymore. We're not going to be seeing extreme heat indices with the dry conditions, thankfully. But keep that in mind about what I just mentioned about the medical conditions and people who may be more vulnerable to heat. Only isolated storms are expected in the next 7 days. We're not expecting any widespread precipitation systems the next 7 days. We might have a little bit more hope for rain the second week of June. It's kind of too soon to pin down like any kind of amounts. We're just hoping for something near normal. I think we get around 3 inches a month or so on average in the summer months, 2 to 3 inches. No widespread strong or severe storms are expected. Continued slow increase in drought conditions are expected as well until we get some rain. So that's my summary. And that's our final slide for those of you who aren't familiar with our contact info. It hasn't changed. That's about it. So I am opening up here to questions in the chat if you're online. I have the audio running muted on the phone, but let's see here on the chat. If you want to type that in, we may be able to do that. I'm going to stop the recording.